Welcome. Today we're going to be discussing the technique blinding sacrifice and some of the more important principles, rules, theories, concepts, and strategies of this technique. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about its history. I know we've talked about history in the past, but let's get into it a little bit more because it's going to bring in some concepts that we need to discuss. So, as we've mentioned in the past, this technique is not really a technique. What it is just a series of basics put together for the purpose of category completion. So in this case, very specialized type of category completion. In this case, we can do left, right, and we can do things simultaneously or put together as what we commonly call doubles. So the important part to pull out of this is the fact that this was not a self-defense technique. It started completely different than many of the other techniques, where it was motions inside of a form that were then extracted and then created through grafting and splicing to create what we now know as blinding sacrifice. Because of that, we're going to take a different tact of talking about this technique. You'll see this as we go forward. But what is the point of all this? The point of all these independent motions done together is to really get into the concept of stages of internalization. So what is that? Stages of internalization describes the fact that you're going to start using maneuvers, concepts, and ideas and get them more and more internalized to the point where they become spontaneous or can be used at will. So now that we've talked through that, let's actually get into the technique. But like I said, we're going to do it a little bit differently. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the demonstration of the technique in a very slow manner so that you can see it being executed, and then analyze the technique through its independent maneuvers to highlight how it was put inside and created inside of All 3. Okay, so let's break down each of these little motions so that you can see how they're not necessarily the best way to do this for this technique, but they are put together to form this technique. And that shows the concept of reading, meaning the fact that you need to understand that this is a sequence as we display it now, or another way to think about it is a base move or a series of maneuvers put together to form blinding sacrifice. But what it is just different maneuvers that can be changed up as needed using the formulation equation. And you're going to see that as we go forward, as we describe each of these motions independently. So let's start out with this beginning motion. We've decided, in this case, purposeful, in order to do the defense followed by the offense. Okay? We could have easily made a different choice, because keep in mind, why do we do things? Because we do them because we want to, purposeful, or we have to, compelled. So in this case, we purposely chose to go to the low end. So let's move on to the next maneuver. If you've noticed, we're at this point. We are breaking the concept or principle of economy of motion by first bringing our hands around, making a cock a separate motion, and then pulling them towards us. Okay, so that's not necessarily the best way to do that. But there are situations where that is the best way to do it. So in this case, something like a double grab, where I've decided to disengage from my opponent, and the easiest way to do this is by using that motion and not crossing the center line without using it, obeying that rule. So if you think about it, we have 3 center lines. We have this vertical one here, we have one here, we have one here. Height, depth, and width zone. So in this case, we're not going to cross the depth center line without using it, and that demonstrates that inside those doubles. Okay, so we decided at the beginning of the technique to go low. We could have easily made a different choice. So in this case, if he was going high, I could have easily decided to go high rather than low. He could have also done this off of grab, where I decided to do the block and then slice. But also keep in mind, I didn't have to do it as a defensive maneuver. I could have just as easily done this as an offensive maneuver, coming in this way. Okay? So let's move on to the next maneuver. That is this piece here. The better way to demonstrate this as an independent motion is through the singles. So if we go through here and we do what we just did previously and use this in an offensive manner, there's an easy way to demonstrate the single version of that. So then that brings us into a different way in which we can do this offensively. We get to that grab again, and I could just as easily done the follow-up maneuver. Okay, but this could also be done at a closer range, like we can do some of the other things here. We get these doubles. Keep in mind that these are the opposite direction. So what we're doing is we're going towards each other this way rather than towards each other in a parallel fashion. They're going using opposing forces. Now, there's another way we demonstrate this inside the form, which is this double this way. The better way to demonstrate this one, just like some of the other ones, is through a single version, where we're doing it with the hand and the forearm rather than the forearm and the forearm. And that brings us into the final maneuver, and that is this double grab knee stomp. Again, not the best way inside the form to demonstrate it. A better way to demonstrate this is through the single version, and that would be through something like a clinch, where double and single means single hand or double hand, where we just do the exact same thing, only from that clinch position. Hope this video helps you understand the American Kenpo system just a little bit better. Thank you very much.